It's session number 125. Forgot to change the session number. Okay, anyway. We'll get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrutatuhe Namaha. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sanga Padakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyana Vastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So welcome everyone to another session of 7th chapter. We are almost towards the end, probably maybe the last couple of lectures. And always, in the reflection time, we like to think about what are we seeking? So I wanted to just open this up to you in life. What are we really seeking? Any thoughts? I know last week we talked about the two kinds of people, but truly, this is a question that we all can actually take a little bit of time to think, what are we really seeking? The word seeking is very important. What are we really looking to? Seeking.
Permanent happiness.
Permanent happiness, yes. Why permanent happiness, Geeta? Any happiness, okay, right?
All these are temporary happiness.
Okay, good. Yes, that is one of them. Maybe I want another two. Yes, so happiness, Meenu has one answer.
Peace, Shanti.
Peace, Shanti, okay. Anything else? Knowing you, I think I was expecting you to say love,
Yeah, she's
when you think she's an embodiment of love, so I think because she's an embodiment of love, she doesn't seek love.
Thank you.
She's that, yeah.
Thank you. All of us.
Yeah.
All of us are full of love. So
that is true.
be
So,
healthy so that we can
healthy, yes.
work on the spirituality.
Okay, so give me good body, healthy body, so that I can realize my goal, right? Yeah.
Right. It's
So,
saying Sarira Majjam Karu Dharma Sadhanam.
yeah.
So can we say like a purpose of life and,
We are seeking
knowing about ourselves, like, and
out.
realizing, yeah,
Okay.
purpose of life, yeah. And
Very
also can the purpose of the life, it will keep changing, right? Also based on the knowledge we get and how we mature,
yes.
right? So
In the
each
beginning
time
of
we have to
purpose,
check that.
correct. Exactly. Exactly. So that is why here, what I'm looking for is something what is something which won't change, So that is what ultimate seeking is, So one thing which Gita said, yes, that is true. One is happiness. The second one is really a security. It's practically speaking, when Anand said body, it is a kind of a security, a healthy body is a security for me, or a house is something like a security for me. A family is like a security for me. So I'm looking for security in a practical sense, because without security, my mind will not even allow me to sit to listen to Bhagavad Gita, right? I must feel secure within myself to be able to have my mind focus on the purpose of life. Like Madhuri said, all that can happen only if I have security. So security is one. The other one is, as Gita said, it's happiness, but we also want permanence. Anything I want it to be permanent, I don't want my grandchild to grow up more than they are 5 years old. When they're young, they're so cute. I want them to be that way. I mean, this is the way we remember our children too. Of course, we accept them for who they are right now, but we go back and think, what made you change? So we don't want any change. We want everything to remain the same way, permanent. And that is why the permanent we superimpose on our happiness also. As much as I'm looking for happiness, and that is why I asked Gita that question, why permanent? Why can't it be temporary? So yes, we want happiness, but we want that happiness to be permanent, right? So these are the three things we're looking for. Sorry, this thing got cut off here. It's security, permanence, and happiness, right? So that's what we're looking for. And I put this up last time too, that these three things, we are looking for it in the world right now, right? All these three things, anything I get, even with my furniture, with my relationships, everything, I want to make sure that it is always there, it'll remain the same fresh. And if you're in US, trust me, yes, the furniture will stay for a long time. The clothing will stay the same for a long time. In India, that's the beauty about it. Coming to India, it's very soon it'll fade away. Very soon it'll deteriorate. So you can keep buying things again. Yeah. So we're looking for all this from the world. What Bhagavad Gita is doing is, and this is why we're coming to Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita is changing that aspect. It's saying that this attachment, as long as you are looking for all the things in the world, it ain't going to happen. These three things. But we are still in the world wanting to make sure that happens. So these three things, basically makes sure that, so we are looking for only in the, not in the world, but we are turning our attention slowly towards the more permanent thing, which is that Lord, that God, which is there But this chapter is telling us that we are looking for God only, but we are looking for the God in the world which is the apara prakriti. Okay, so the 7th chapter is telling that there's nothing wrong what you're looking for, but don't look for the same things. Just look at it a little differently. So look at that same world, which is Jagat, which has got all the forms, names, which has got all the qualities. So as an example, if you're looking for, you're looking for something in the world like the necklace, like he says, or you're looking for the bangle, try and see that you're looking for the gold, not for the bangle, not for the necklace. So slowly and slowly, in and through whatever I'm looking at in the world, I look at it a little more deeper. I kind of shift my attention, looking at the same thing, but look at it, look at the more permanent part of it. Okay, so that is the first step. The first step is I drop my identification to the form and the name, and I look for something which is permanent in and through that same object. And from there on, move on to the next level, where I look at even that aspect. So even we can even use it very logically, that is, let's take this example of gold itself, right? First of all, I'm looking at this material, which is a necklace or a bangle or a ring or whatever. I look at it as a gold. Next thing, I really wonder where this gold came from. If I look at it logically, the gold came from the earth, correct? Obviously, it has been mined, it has come from the earth. Now, let's take, before it formed gold, what was it? Okay, it was some minerals, some previous mineral it was, and over a period of time, it became gold. Where did the minerals come from? They came from some material in the earth. Now, where did earth come from? So earth has itself, like in Taittiriya Upanishad and all that, and even in Atma Bodh, not Atma Bodh, sorry, Tattva Bodh, we have seen the earth actually comes from the previous element, which is water. Where did the water come from? It came from the fire. Where did the fire come from? It came from the air, Where did the air come from? It came from the space. And where did space come from? It came from ultimately Brahman. So this is that logical sequence is already being given. Maybe one day when we do some of these Upanishads, we can go more deeper into it. So even logically, we can explain that is where it came from, So now you see the temporary to permanence. So we are attaching our attention always to the temporary aspect of things. And this is why we are not able to get that permanent happiness. So I have to slowly and slowly shift my attention towards that which is always there. That is where the permanence is there, and which is actually the ultimate Brahman, which is always there, which has got no names, no, ashabdam, asparsham, a rupam. It has no form. It cannot be said asparsham. Then cannot even be spoken about. Nothing. That is what that ultimate Brahman is. So we have to move towards that which is the permanent of permanence. Okay. So anyway, that's what the 7th chapter is leading you all the way to, from attachment to the world to attachment to God. But attachment to God as Ishvara, we go to the temple and all that, but even beyond that, we need to go. Any thoughts, any questions?
So everything in this world will lead us to Brahman? Like
Everything
you
in the world.
started with gold, right? Like that,
Correct.
every
Exactly.
little thing will lead us to the Brahman.
Yes, everything will lead us to it in our mind. It is actually, at the end of the day, it is
Brahman.
that Brahman, you know, and that is where only our human mind will be able to grasp that. But we don't allow our mind to be to grasp that, because it is very fascinating for us to allow my mind to be in that bangle and the necklace and the beautiful colors and the beautiful soft, everything connected to the five senses, you know. It is so beautiful to touch. It is so beautiful to see. It is so beautiful to hear, so beautiful to see. Our mind stops right there. It doesn't go beyond, but we have to push ourselves. We have to keep on pushing ourselves to go to that realm. Only then our mind is really getting sharper. You know, this is an important way of thinking, even for us in the normal world, you know. But in and through that, we have to go even beyond. And that is why in this chapter, when he talks about the four types of people, the Artha, Artharthi, Jignasu, Jnani, they're all matters of evolution. And last week, I also put this other ladder up where I showed the food and shelter to the next level, to ultimately things, right? So anyway, that is wanted to, yeah, any question or anything else beyond that? So the shlokas, like in 20, you know, he talks about how this, how our attention to all these names and forms, they're so addictive. You know, we talk about being addicted to drugs and all that, but guess what? This is also a major addiction for us. That is why he's saying that addiction leads us to being unable to see this aspect of Brahman, you know, and we get caught up in all these things. And this caught up is what, you know, we talked about this, the ultimate wisdom, what we're talking about here, it gets taken over and we are helplessly, we don't even know we're helplessly driven to all these smaller deities. You know, we talked about before, you know, when we have a desire, we go to that particular manager to fulfill my desire. But when I go to a particular group to fulfill my desire, what happens is that group demands a certain way of doing things. I mean, like, for example, I remember when I was in Detroit, you know, I had two, three locations where BSF was. On one hand, when I was in Southfield, when I was working in Southfield, that group had certain demands on how I could work. When I went to Wyandotte, it was a lot more relaxing. But then my drive was too high, and it was like 30 miles one way, you know, I had to drive. So each of these desire, when we have, it comes with its own limitations. But we don't realize that. We just get caught up, right?
Sunitha, when you say their wisdom is looted away, what do you mean by wisdom there?
See, we all have this ability to think through this, whatever I'm presenting, okay? And that wisdom is within us. So we are not exercising that wisdom which we have come into this world, you know? So from the time we are a child, what happens is we have the ability to give the right kind of knowledge to a child. But instead, it's just a simple example. You know, what happens is today, the world is such that to a child, you know, to your own grandchild, okay, we ask the grandchild, what do you want, baby? You know, you ask the child to tell you what he or she needs, knowing very well that is probably not a good thing that the child is asking sometimes. Not all the time. I'm just giving that as an example. But we keep on saying, do you think this is good for you? We are telling the child all the time. My point is, each one of us have the ability to evolve, but we subconsciously push ourselves down, So our own wisdom is being looted by all these small, small desires, small, small things. So that's what we're saying.
Okay.
So then the question comes is, when do I evolve from this kind of thing where I am here, where I'm constantly looking at desires and I'm going to the God. So again, this is a matter of evolution, we said, right? In the beginning, I think I can fulfill my own desires myself. I don't need this thing called as God. Then I somehow, I get into some problems or whatever, then which makes me go to God. That's why we said that dukkha nivritti is the first step to remove any kind of a sorrow. Once that is satisfied, then I'm looking for something else. And those are, then I pray to God for better things in my life. Once that better things is fulfilled, then I go to the next step. Then I ask, who are you? We really ask God, who are you? That is a jignasu state. And finally, I get to the state where I recognize that God is not somewhere sitting somewhere else, just giving me and only me something, but not to my neighbors. But God is God is none other than me alone. And that me alone is this Brahman, but I have given myself a false identity. And with that false identity, I'm living in a false world. And in that false world, I'm trying to get false things. And I'm constantly living a false life. So that part, till that state, this whole thing, Bhagavad Gita is telling us that we can evolve. So for a long time, I stay in that. And after I reach the stage of 80 years old or something, I finally wake up. When my mind is not functioning very well, my body is very slow. My whole attention is asking me to focus only because my knees are paining and my knees are not cooperating. I have to go for a knee replacement, or I have to have my eyes replaced. So many problems we have where our attention gets focused only there. And we are not giving ourselves an opportunity to think about what is the reality. And that is why the wisdom, Gita, as I said, is looted away, because my mind is under this delusion. I'm living in this delusion, So in Shloka 21, what we see is Krishna saying that don't worry, whatever you're asking, I am fulfilling you all this in whatever way form. I'm not trying to suppress you, but I'm trying to show you that you fulfill everything, but come to a point where you start to have that Shraddha. So that Shraddha is what I just put it up here, because the Shraddha first leads me to opportunities. Opportunities shows the direction, and ultimately it is only through that basically Krishna is saying, as I'm giving you something, he's like, how do I say this? He is giving us something, a candy, so that I'll come to him. So he's giving me more and more candies so that I come more and more to him. Okay. And then in this thing, I have this aham achalam vidadhami. I'm trying to get you to focus your attention on me and not on the candy. So slowly and slowly and slowly, you can see the shloka is trying to show how that, he's trying to get us to focus more and more on him than to the world. Okay, aham achalam vidadami. I will try to give you that thing. And then here, then he says this. So this is, I have one or two beautiful things here to tell you, So he says, Sataya Shraddhaya Yuktaha, Tasya Aradhanam Ihate. He then engages in the worship of that deity, and from him he obtains. And then ultimately Krishna is saying that, yes, you think you're praying to all these gods, but let me tell you that ultimately these gods are, I have employed them only. Okay, you are coming to me only, he's saying. I, in the form of these different gods, are actually that I'm fulfilling whatever you want. So even though you think that a particular devata is doing it, ultimately I am the fulfiller. Okay, so he's very clear about, it's like, for example, when I open the water tap, in my faucet, in my sink in the kitchen, where is the water finally coming from? It comes from somewhere, one of the reservoirs, those big reservoirs you see in Troy or anything, those reservoirs, right? And where is the water coming from? It's coming from Lake Michigan. So ultimately, it's coming from there. So too, for all of us, if I have that same concept that whenever I'm going to a temple, that God is nothing but a sort of a postman. I mean, nowadays we don't even have this concept of postman. We have only emails and everything. We don't even get the mail. But you can imagine, just like the postman delivers something to us, right? Or this water tap delivers water. Krishna is saying, ultimately, you are coming to me only. I am the only this one. But then he constantly keeps reminding you, remember that, whatever you're getting, it is still very temporary. It is very addictive. And don't be sitting right there. Try to evolve. That is the one thing he's saying. So here, I wanted to point out something interesting. So I was reading Shankaracharya's Bhashya on this. And it's just so beautiful. Shankaracharya, the way he says this, Mayeva Vihitan Hitan, so he says, this is, at the end of the day, it is ordained by me only. Okay. But then there is a sort of a different reading you can get on this particular thing here. So he has this, he's taken that word hitan iti padachede. Padachede means where you're breaking the word, okay? Hitatvam kamanam upacharitam kalpayam nahi kama hitaha kasyachit. Basically, he's trying to really point out in this word about hitan, where he's putting the word he, meaning indeed. It is because of this reason, he says, this tan has to be added to kaman. Kaman means desire. So tan, kaman means those desires which are asked by him. And he says tan is, kind of an adjective to kaman. He says that, you can, he wants it to be looked at that ultimately all these worldly desires will be fulfilled by Krishna. Hitan, kaman is equal to say that all these desires, okay, will be fulfilled by Krishna. But then he says, from a Vedantic perspective, he says that ultimately every desire, is not that good. Even, in the beginning, you may say that, after I'm asking only for a son, what's wrong with that? I'm asking only for a good partner in life. What's wrong with that, right? So all that is good up to a certain extent, but afterwards, even these things will actually cause only certain, the three defects, which is, they are built-in pain, Again, we cannot definitely say this to a 20-year-old who's starting off, right? And who's going to get married and everything, we can't say this. But after some time, we recognize that every desire has these three defects, which is dukkha mishritvam, which is built-in pain. It can never, ever be fulfilled. Like I said, it's very addictive. And ultimately, it can cause slavery. Okay, slavery in the sense it keeps you bound to it. So three important things from all these desires. Okay, so beautifully, the idea is, at the end of the day, every desire, we have to be careful on how we are dealing with it. And it can only, if you're not careful, we can be killed by that desire. Okay. So here, I don't know how many of you have read this. Does anybody remember the story? The necklace. It's a very, very famous story. I remember reading this when I was either in high school or college as a non-detailed text. Do you remember? So it's a story about, and this is a story that comes to my mind when you think about this. It's a story about this Guy de Maupassant is a French author, very famous. You can Google it and all that, and that's how we got this picture actually. It's a story about this young wife, a young woman. Her name is Matilda. She's married to her husband is a sort of a government employee, but not in a very high position or anything. So, she gets married and, but she's always wanting to lead a very, very luxurious life. It's always something that she dreams about. So one day what happens is her husband is invited to a very fancy ball, they call it ball, right? Or a party. And her husband, finally feels that, okay, finally I have a chance to take my wife to this ball. So she's also very excited, she wants to get a good dress. So her husband somehow finds some money to buy a good dress for her and everything. Then she feels she doesn't have anything to wear. So her husband says, okay, you know what, why don't you ask this rich friend of yours if she can loan you something? So she goes to the friend, and this friend just opens up her cabinet, and then she finds this beautiful diamond necklace. And so this Matilda, takes the diamond necklace. She says, yeah, you can wear this today and you can return to me tomorrow. So she borrows that, and when she wears this and with the gown, she is the talk of the ball. Everyone is so excited. She feels like a queen. She feels like the center of it. Everyone is looking at her. So the night goes on. There's this ball. They dance, and finally, just in the early hours of the morning, they come back home. As soon as she comes home, she finds the necklace is missing. She thinks that she's lost in the cab, and they get so, worked up. And so the next day, they decide to go to a jewelry store, and they find a similar necklace, but the necklace is like exorbitant, something like, I don't know, 35,000 francs or whatever, really very exorbitant. But somehow they take a loan, they get that necklace, and then she returns that necklace to her friend. And then for the next 10 years, both of them have to work so hard just to repay the loan. And so one day after 10 years, what happens is she meets this friend of hers with whom she got the necklace, and she couldn't help finally confessing to her what happened, because the girl, that her friend asked her, what happened? You look so tired, you look so old. What happened? She said, well, this is what happened. So the friend just laughs, and he said, that was a fake necklace. And all this time, so many years, she had spent her time only working for something like this, So the idea, to me, that story struck, as I was reading Shankaracharya's Bhashya, right? This story came to my mind, because, and I thought it was exactly how we are leading our lives, in the sense, we are in this make-believe world. We are drawn to all these things. It's such an illusion. What is real and what is illusion? So it's a fake necklace with which she had such a great time and all that, thinking it was real. And thinking it was real, she spent so many years working so hard to pay off something that was not even worth it, So in this one story, I found so much of Vedanta in it, about how that's how our life is. We're giving importance to so many different things which don't have to be given importance. Or we recognize, of course, the temporariness. We have to give importance when at that moment, but later not, to recognize the temporariness and to move on, Any thoughts on this? So that's what Shankaracharya is saying in the shloka, that Hitan, Mayeva Hitan is trying to say that ultimately every desire, and that is the whole thing, what I said, it's got built-in pain. It is never permanent and it keeps you bound to it. And the more expensive it is, the more we put our money to it, and the more it is, it keeps us bound to it, keeps us bound.
It's a good example and story. I heard the name Matilda before. But I was trying to think of, where I heard, but the name sounds familiar. Yeah, it's an interesting story.
Yeah, it is. It is so powerful, so powerful. Our whole life is like that. We are, if I say we're leading a fake life, it sounds too this, but anyway.
So how does the story end? What was the author trying to say?
The author was trying to, actually, you can read the internet. I was trying, where I picked up this. There are so many different morals that the author says, about how honesty is the best policy, or actually, it's not even, the author is not saying that, They just say the story, but then I'm pretty sure this is a story for even the English literature students or something. But they come up with different, so, they discuss about the morals, but nobody's discussed a moral like the way I just presented that to you, which is to show the fake, the life being, we are paying attention to something which is so glamorous, so jazzy, and we get caught by it. And our whole life, we are looking at, the grass being green on the other side. And, the story about this woman, it doesn't have to be a woman. It could be, in, the other way too. But point is, we're always comparing ourselves. There's so much that can come out of the story, the competitiveness in the world. What are we trying to compete for? So many different ways, but the illusion part of it is what attracted me to this story, at least.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is what this materialism we are talking about, which is dukkha mishritvam. Every worldly accomplishments is always mixed with an equal amount of pain, just like the two sides of the coin. This is something we need to think about. Maybe these are some things that at the Balavihar time, at the chick level, 10th, 11th grade, we probably should give them ideas that, how acquisition always, whenever you're trying to acquire something, there is always a struggle. There's an anxiety, worry, fear, jealousy. What if this other person beats me to this position? All these things we have to think about. And once I get something, then I have to worry about preserving it, so all that. So first thing is it's got pain. Second thing is every worldly accomplishment is finite. That's the other thing, part of it, which will not come immediately, but over a period of time, you recognize that, ultimately, what am I trying to accomplish in this world? At some point, I have to be happy and then let go, So again, any amount of wealth will never be satisfying enough. As one Swamiji would say that, either somebody is poor, you say he's a poor rich man, or he's a poor moneyed man, Previously, he was poor without money, and now he's poor with money, but then he has so much of bankruptcy and all that going on that, you still. And the third thing is that it creates slavery. So everything which is in the world will always bind us. So I have to look at the world now in and through every form and everything, look at what is the permanency there. So anyway, that is, so then in 23, basically trying to say that finite indeed is a fruit, antavat tu phalam tesham, that, so here Krishna is going one step further to say that ultimately all these finite things that we're looking for in the world are obtained only by people with little intelligence. So the worshippers of devas, they go to them, but my devotees, they come to me. So what he's trying to say here is, my devotee mad bhakta yanti mam api. So Krishna in the form of ultimate, again taking that four types of devotees, ultimately the one who comes to me is the jnani. The jnani is the only one who recognizes ultimately that I have to go even beyond Ishvara to that state of Brahman. So that's, and here again a little bit of Shankaracharya's bhashya, where he says, evam samane api ayase mam eva na prapadyante ananta phalaya aho khalu kashtam vartate iti anukrosham darshayati Bhagavan. Bhagavan, that is Krishna, is like giving up. He's saying, oh my God, look at all these people, why are they struggling so much in this world? I can give them so much, but they're still basically, he's saying that same amount of effort, okay, that it's not, we are saying that oh my God, this is going to take so long time, right? This realizing Brahman will take forever. It'll take so many lives and all that. But he's saying, no, it's not like that. And here, I wanted to give you one more thing to think about here. It's just another kind of a story, the story is like, there's this big wedding going on, okay? And in this wedding, what happens is, kids, I couldn't find a proper thing of a young boy, so I put this picture up. So this wedding is going on, and there is this, and imagine this is an Indian wedding, so there is, in those days, okay, those days they used to have this store, and I remember this, I'm sure all of you can relate to this also. There used to be, one of your uncles will be made the storehouse keeper, because the kitchen, there'll be a lot of cooking going on. Every time somebody has to run back and forth and take the stuff from the storehouse, and then everything gets made and then it's put into the store, right? So there's a storekeeper, he's, laddus are just made and they're going into the storehouse. So one small boy comes and, goes to the storekeeper and says, can I have a laddu, So the storekeeper gives him that laddu. So the storekeeper meaning this person who's in charge of that store, okay, not a outside store. So he gives him a laddu, and then this boy runs and shows all the other boys, see, I got this laddu. So immediately all the other boys will also go. They all stand in a line, one after the other, and they get a laddu. In the meantime, this boy has already finished his laddu, and so he goes back and stands in the line, By that time, the line is getting bigger, and when he stands in the line, he gets another laddu, and then after that, he wants one more. And then, he gets very smart. He says, instead of each time standing in the line and getting a laddu, why don't I just ask for the keys to the laddu storehouse? I can get. So how much effort did it take for him? That effort to get one laddu or to get all the laddus was exactly the same effort. All he had to do was stand in the line, right? But he could ask for something much, much bigger. So that's how our lives are also. We live in this false world, like I said, and we are asking for small, small things which are not even permanent, which are temporary. I know we may say, yeah, but I can see it, I can feel it. How can I ask for that Brahman? I don't know what Brahman looks like. It's like me, going to a wonderful wedding, a nice wedding, and then asking for plain rice, and when all the food which I can enjoy, I'm just asking for that white rice and I'm eating the white rice. Will I ever do that? That's how it sounds like, isn't it? But then in my mind, I should be convinced that ultimately this taste, all this is not permanent and I can go for something more. So that is what this Shankaracharya is lamenting about in this Bhashya. And he says, Krishna can give anything. It's all up to us. Evam samani api ayase, very simply, with hardly any effort, you can get that, but people are people. They won't even ask for these things. They won't ask for that keys, they are happy with just that small one laddu, So that's what he's trying to say. And that is why in chapter 2, already, Krishna had told us, Neha kramana shosti pratyavayo na vidyate swa alpamasya dharmasya trayate mato bhayat. Even a little bit of this knowledge, swa alpa asya dharmasya trayate mato bhayat. It can remove all fear from us. This fear of losing something, this fear of protecting something, all that can be removed just by this aspect. So that is why, here we have these two things. Do we just go to the smaller gods, satisfy our desire, or do we go to that ultimate Krishna himself, where our desires itself will be reduced? And because of that, I think about more and more of Krishna, and then I try to evolve. Any questions so far? Did those examples drive home the point? I mean, the story. I'm picking things from different places. I mean, the thought, it's just so beautiful when you spend a little bit of time on just that shloka, and think what they're trying to say and look at what Shankaracharya is saying. The thoughts just help you. I mean, we all see the whole thing in front of us, but we don't necessarily pay attention to it, And it's getting even more difficult for us these days, with ChatGPT becoming so easy, making things so easy for us, with artificial intelligence. What was I reading in US? About 20% of the jobs can be eliminated, or something like that, some big number, just with this artificial intelligence, So the question then comes, where should I focus my attention? I think for all of us, it's easy. We can actually look into what Gita is saying and think about the fact that ultimately, by praying to these small gods, when I say small gods here, not necessarily just the temple gods, but also the small managers, where we are working. Ultimately, they have limited powers. Let us see how we can get to the biggest boss, the biggest boss who can give me a lot more, because the small bosses, they are limited by time, limited by enjoyment and power. And we know in US, I think somehow I feel when you work in US, one can become realized very quickly, because immediately you know that our time in a work is limited. You can get fired anytime. So that is what I'm saying, Kala, time. And the company may go under. On one hand, you can enjoy all perks, but that may not, and even power. All these are very limited. So you can really as I said, understand what your thing is. So ultimately, what does that ultimate God give us? It takes that as we go more deeper and deeper, we can get more and more love, which is unconditional. There is no conditions attached to that love. So that is the ultimate thing. So which is, the Lord is, we can actually understand the Lord's power of love. So love is really the language which ultimately leads us to, which is another thing. The reason I put this up is many times we think our Vedanta is very dry, and Vedanta doesn't teach us the idea of what is love, but what ultimately what Krishna is saying is, Krishna is nothing but pure love, and he's trying to say that when I approach Krishna with that pure love, he gives me so much more. So then this takes us to the next few shlokas. Again, as somebody may ask, the question is, why am I not then seeking that Krishna who is beyond all these alpa asay, that Krishna who is Brahman himself. So that part of it is now where he says, Avyaktam vyaktimapannam, Avyaktam vyaktimapannam, Manyante mama buddhayaha, Manyante mama buddhayaha, Param bhavamajanantaha, Param bhavamajanantaha, Mamavyayam 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 Avyaktam vyaktimapannam, Manyante mama buddhayaha, Param bhavamajanantaha, Mamavyayam. So he's saying that Avyaktam vyaktimapannam. Even though Krishna as Brahman, though unmanifest, he's actually unmanifest, but as an ordinary human being, manyante, people consider him abuddhayaha. Abuddhaya, that is people, again, he had used a different term before, people of little intelligence. Here he's saying unintelligent fools, they consider him to be manifest. Param bhavam ajanantaha. They don't know his higher nature. The para prakriti nature, people don't know. But at the end of the day, he is actually avyayam and he is anuttamam. He is with no comparison at all. Anuttamam. He is incomparable. He is actually imperishable. But then people don't have that understanding at all about him. And that is why people are still stuck in the world, and people are still, attracted to the names and forms and everything, because people don't know that he's avyaktam. He's actually unmanifest, but they think that he's manifest. And how is he manifest? Because we think, like, starting with where he's talking about himself, Krishna, right? So we have this idea that Krishna is in a particular form. Because he's in a particular form as Ishvara, I think that is how he is manifest. So that by itself is one obstacle by which I'm unable to get to that level of him being Brahman. The other thing is that I look at the world, and in the world, I look at everything as forms and names and everything, and I don't recognize the essence behind all these names and forms. And therefore, again, I'm not able to see Brahman in the world. And coming to my own self as Jiva, what happens is I look at myself constantly. I interact with the world constantly. as this body, mind, intellect, and therefore I'm not able to see that it is nothing but Brahman everywhere, right? So in all these areas, so simple things, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, in all these places, my understanding of the world is different. My understanding of who God is different. My understanding of my own self is different. So with that being the case, it is but natural that I look at the world not like how Krishna is saying, to be looking at it as Brahman, as the fact that it is infinite. I am looking at everything only in a very finite way. So that itself is because of this. So it is in many ways, he says it's nobody's fault, because the one who holds a hammer, everything looks like a nail, because we are so accustomed to looking at the world this way that I'm unable to think that the world is very different. And so we are used to a certain mode of thing. We spend, our entire waking life, as soon as I get up in the morning, the thought that strikes me is I'm Sunitha. The minute I think I'm Sunitha, the next thing, what is the role I'm playing that day? And then what are all the activities associated with this role? So due to this, absolutely this constant thinking about who I am, I tend to always, I'm fooled by my own self, right? So that is one of the biggest problems we are facing. And this is because of the Yoga Maya that he calls, it is, the whole thing is because of that. So in the next shloka, he says, Naham prakasha sarvasya, Naham prakasha sarvasya, Yoga Maya samavritaha, Yoga Maya samavritaha, Mudhoyam nabhijanati, Mudhoyam nabhijanati, Loko mamajamavyayam, Loko mamajamavyayam. So he says, so in some ways, Krishna is taking the onus upon himself, and he's saying, I, na aham prakashaha sarvasya. I'm not really manifest to all, because I'm veiled by this Yoga Maya. It's almost, imagine, there's this, imagine if the whole world was like a big painting, beautiful painting. And on top of the painting, you put one big veil, a veil. So you're not able to see the painting at all. So that's that Yoga Maya, So Yoga Maya samavritaha, that whole, even though Krishna is saying, I'm the one in you, I'm the one in this whole world, I'm the one who is that Ishvara, but then this Maya is covering the whole thing. So Mudaha ayam na abhijanati. So this deluded world knows me not as Lokaha mam ajam and abhyayam. I am actually unborn and I am actually imperishable. But reason why which is happening is because my mind is always trained to recognize things only in a certain space and time, right? This is how, like, we call this as an Einsteinian world, this Einsteinian world, which is always governed by time and space. We are always, anything and everything, we tend to always use this time and space as a way to relate to things, right? So because of this time and space, the way we're using it, we are unable to recognize that there's something which is beyond time and space. So Brahman is beyond time and space, and that part of it, we are just not able to do it, because everything in time and space is what, we see, we hear, we touch, we smell, we taste, everything is in this time and space. We just cannot even imagine things without this time and space. So this time and space is what is part of this whole Maya. And this Maya is why we are not able to, that veil which needs to be really kind of pierced before I can get to the painting. So that one, which you need to understand that. And that part of it, we will address in the next shlokas, 26th to 30th, where we are looking at now this idea of absolute Brahman now. So far we have gone through, like I said, we see the world as the deities. From the deities, we are looking at, ultimately, it's nothing but Ishvara. But the last 4 shlokas will focus just on that aspect of Brahman, which we will try to do next week. And then the week after, we'll just summarize the whole 7th chapter. Okay. Any last thoughts or questions? Okay, so we'll finish at this point. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Let me stop the